Good morning. In Daniel chapter 5, that's where we'll begin today. In summarization of what I talked about last time, we saw that King Nebuchadnezzar was to be the first of 4 world-ruling governments that would rise out of the earth. And then King Nebuchadnezzar was sent out as a beast. He was given a heart of a beast, so it would be a type of what he would really become as a ruler. It would be the exact opposite of what God will do when He rules, with love and joy and peace, and bring prosperity and absolute utopia to the earth. And then, at the end of the 7-year period, in Daniel chapter 4, the last verse, 37, here was the conclusion that Nebuchadnezzar came to as to why that he was sent out into the field for 7 years and grazed as an animal and who had a heart as a beast. Now I, Nebuchadnezzar, praise and extol and honor the King of heaven, all whose works are truth, and His ways judgment. And those that walk in pride He is able to abase. This is the conclusion of the matter with Nebuchadnezzar. Anyone on the face of the earth that walks in pride, God has the power to humble those individuals. No matter who they are, whether they're world leaders or at this time, us as individual Christians. Let's go with that thought in mind that God is able to abase anyone who walks in pride right into chapter 5. Belshazzar the king made a great feast to 1,000 of his lords. So many of those who rule in the kingdom, he had a cabinet meeting, you might say, from all parts of his kingdom. Belshazzar followed in the footsteps of Nebuchadnezzar and so on, and this line of kings, and drank wine before the 1,000. Belshazzar, while he tasted the wine, commanded to bring the golden and silver vessels which his father Nebuchadnezzar had taken out of the temple which was in Jerusalem, that the king and his princes, his wives, and his concubines might drink therein. So here was a Gentile kingdom going to defile the implements from the temple of God. Verse 3, Then they brought the golden vessels that were taken out of the temple of the house of God, which was at Jerusalem, and the king and his princes, his wives, and his concubines drank in them. They drank wine, and notice what they were doing, using the vessels that were in the temple of God, or taken from that temple, and praised the gods of gold, and of silver, of brass, of iron, of wood, and of stone. They were praising idols by using the implements from the temple of God. Verse 5, In the same hour came forth fingers of a man's hand, and wrote over against the candlestick upon the plaster of the wall of the king's palace. And the king saw the part of the hand that wrote. Can you imagine us sitting here and all of a sudden a hand just appears and it starts writing something on the wall? There's no body attached, just a hand. And it puts a message on the wall. Well, let's see the results. Verse 7 or 6. Then the king's countenance was changed, and his thoughts troubled him, so that the joints of his loins were loosed. It scared him, and every joint in his body just began to shake. And his knees smote one against another. That's fear. I've heard of people saying the first time they ever got up to lead a prayer, or maybe to read a scripture, or give a sermonette or a sermon, that they were so scared their knees knocked together. Well, that's the truth. I mean, right in the Bible, you can become so scared your knees knock together. The king cried aloud to bring in the astrologers, the Chaldeans, and the soothsayers, and the king spoke and said to the wise men of Babylon, Whosoever shall read this writing and show me the interpretation thereof shall be clothed with scarlet, and have a chain of gold about his neck, and shall be the 3rd ruler in the kingdom. Then came in all the king's wise men, but they could not read the writing, nor make known to the king the interpretation thereof. Then was King Belshazzar greatly troubled, and his countenance was changed in him, and his lords were astonished. Now the queen, by reason of the words of the king, and his lords came into the banquet house, and the queen spake and said, O king, live forever. That was their way of acknowledging the king. Let not your thoughts trouble you, nor let your countenance be changed. There is a man in your kingdom in whom is the spirit of the holy gods. And in the days of your father, that was Nebuchadnezzar, light and understanding and wisdom, like the wisdom of the gods, was found in him. And of course that could only have been given supernaturally through the Spirit of the living God. Whom the king Nebuchadnezzar, your father, the king, I say your father, made master of the magicians, astrologers, Chaldeans, and soothsayers. For as much as an excellent spirit and knowledge and understanding, interpreting of dreams, and showing of hard sentences, and dissolving of doubts, were found in the same Daniel, whom the king named Belshazzar. Now let Daniel be called, and he'll show the interpretation. And it was interesting that Daniel at one time rose to the very highest in the kingdom of Nebuchadnezzar, and then for some reason was sort of shelved somewhere down the line with the transfer of power. And now once again somebody remembered him. Verse 15. And now the wise men, the astrologers, have been brought in before you, that they should read this writing, and make known unto me the interpretation thereof. But they could not show the interpretation of the thing. And I have heard of you, that you can make interpretations and dissolve doubts. Now if you can read the writing, and make known to me the interpretation thereof, you shall be clothed with scarlet, have a chain of gold about your neck, and shall be the third ruler in the kingdom. That's power. Daniel will have the opportunity to use that power for good if he could read and give the interpretation of the writing on the wall. So Daniel answered in verse 17, the king, because the king wanted to give him gifts if he could give the interpretation. Daniel refused the gifts and said, keep them and give your rewards to somebody else, to another individual. Yet I'll read the writing unto the king and make known to him the interpretation. You king, the most high God, you king, the most high God gave Nebuchadnezzar your father a kingdom and majesty and glory and honor. And for the majesty that he gave him, all people, nations, and languages trembled and feared before him. It was world government, or government over the entire known world at that time. Maybe some far outreaching civilization somewhere that they did not know about escaped from his hands. But basically it was world government and the civilized world at that time. And whom he kept alive. So Nebuchadnezzar had total power. And whom he would set up, and whom he would put down. And when his heart was lifted up, here's the key as to what's about to happen, and his mind hardened in pride. Remember the last verse of chapter 4? He knew that God could now humble those who were proud. He was disposed from his kingly throne, and they took his glory from him. And he was driven from the sons of men, and his heart was made like the beasts, and his dwelling was with the wild asses. They fed him with grass like oxen, and his body was wet with the dew of the heaven, till he knew that the Most High God ruled in the kingdom of men, and that he appointed over it whomsoever he will. And you, his son, O Belshazzar, has not humbled your heart, though you knew all this. After all, he was his son. Remember in the New Testament where Jesus had worked all the miracles, and the Apostle John, when he penned his book, he said all these things were done, and they were not done in secret, but openly, so that no one was without excuse to know of all the miracles that he had performed. And John said all the things that happened, so much happened that you couldn't even fill all the books in the world with it. That's what happened here also. Those things that happened to Nebuchadnezzar were not done in secret. They were done openly, so that he would be humbled. And yet his son Belshazzar was not humbled. Verse 23, but has lifted up yourself against the Lord of heaven. Remember, he was worshiping and drinking out of the cups and so on of gold from the temple of God, but he was worshiping the gods of gold, silver, their own idols and so on, and not the God of heaven. And they have brought the vessels of his house before you, and your lords and so on, and you drunk from them. Now drop down to verse 24. Then was the part of the hand sent from him. It was sent from God Almighty, the creator of the universe. And this writing was written. And this is the writing that was written. Mene, mene, tekel, upharsin. This is the interpretation of the thing. Remember, most things in Bible prophecy are dual. It will happen then, but there is a far greater meaning at a later time. Mene meant God has numbered your kingdom and finished it. Tekel, you are weighed in the balances and are found wanting. Belshazzar was not right with God. He had totally eliminated the true God from his thought processes. Verse 28, Perez, thy kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and the Persians. Then commanded Belshazzar, and they clothed Daniel with scarlet, and put a chain of gold about his neck, and made a proclamation concerning him, that he should be the third ruler of the kingdom. Now notice what happened. He was told, Belshazzar was told, that his kingdom was coming to an end. His days were numbered. The kingdom would be given to the Medes and the Persians. That would be the second world ruling government in the vision that Nebuchadnezzar, his father, had. It would be the Babylonian Empire beginning with Nebuchadnezzar, then the Medo-Persian Empire. And right here, the Bible confirms it a second time in the same book. Verse 30, in that night was Belshazzar, the king of the Chaldeans, slain, and Darius the Median took the kingdom, being about 62 years old. Now, how did this happen? History tells us that the city of Babylon was impregnable. You could not get into it. What they did was they diverted the riverbed so that the river would go around instead of through the city. And therefore the armies could go in where the river once flowed. And that's how they came in the very night when they were having this huge banquet with all the advisors, all those in authority from all over his kingdom were inside the city. So that in one fell swoop they could actually destroy everybody that had authority in the kingdom of Babylon. And it happened the very same night that Daniel foretold it, because God had written it on the wall. It's also interesting, remember in ancient languages they would also assign numerical values to the letters in that language. The numerical value of mene, mene, tekel, upharsin adds up to 2,520. It's interesting because when you go back into a previous chapter that I'd mentioned, where Nebuchadnezzar was to be out in the field 7 times, and he was 7 literal years, but a day for a year, 2,520 years, and then the root that was bound with iron, or the trunk of the tree, but the roots would stay down into the ground and it would continue to grow and stay there, but underground until a certain period of time. Then it would flourish again, and we see in Revelation 17 that it's called Mystery Babylon the Great, showing that it would be their religious system that would be flourishing at the very end of the age, but it would be under cover, disguised all through the years until the end of the age, and then it would surface for what it really is. And it's interesting, on this particular night, 538 AD or BC, is when the kingdom of Babylon fell. And then when you add 2,520 years forward, with no year zero, you come to 1982, right toward the very end of the age. Chapter 6. It pleased Darius to set over the kingdom 120 princes, which shall be over the whole kingdom, and over these 3 presidents. So there were to be 3 presidents over the entire kingdom that would have the rulership responsible to him, of whom Daniel was first, and that the princes might give account unto them, and the king should have no damage. So now Daniel was to be placed in the top leadership, first of 3 presidents in the entire kingdom of Babylon. Of course, it was to be a serf state now to the Medo-Persian Empire, and Darius was to rule over it. Verse 3, then this Daniel was preferred above the presidents and princes, because an excellent spirit was in him. It was called God's Spirit. The spirit of love and joy, and the spirit of cooperation, and what is good for everyone was in him. And he worked willingly and helpfully. And the king thought to set him over the whole realm. Verse 4. Notice that in every government that exists, there's always plots, conspiracies, counter-conspiracies, all seeking power to overthrow the existing power. Verse 4. Notice how the plot begins to thicken. Then the presidents and princes sought to find occasion against Daniel concerning the kingdom, just like the Council on Foreign Relations and the Trilateral Commission and the Bilderbergers and the Illuminati does today in the government of the United States. Any good man, they always find out something to destroy him and cause him to be unacceptable to the public. Even though it may be drummed up, it may not be the truth, times have never changed. Why? Because Satan and his demons are behind all governments and always have been. Therefore, they use the same tactics over and over. It's just a new generation that don't know of the tactics. And so the tactics are repeated. But they could find none occasion nor fault, for as much as he was faithful, neither was there any error or fault found in him. Daniel was an exemplary person who never made mistakes in his governmental position. He did everything proper. Verse 5. Then said these men, we shall not find any occasion against this Daniel, except we find it against him concerning the law of his God. How are they going to trap us at the end of the age? Because we will not worship the same God as they do in Freemasonry, the higher 33rd degree, the great principle. And therefore we will not be on the same wavelength with them. Verse 6. Then these presidents and princes assembled together to the king and said thus unto the king. So King Darius's advisors came forward so that they could set a trap. Just like today, to give you an example, in the 20th century, we have in this country that gives us the greatest freedom in the world, what is called the law of habeas corpus. This means that if you are arrested for some reason, you must be brought up and to determine whether that is a legal arrest or not, and whether the cause for your arrest is real and sufficient to hold you in jail. If you want to create a martial law state, a military state, all you do is eliminate habeas corpus. Presidents of the United States wrote in 1911, 12, and 13, and it's recorded in the libraries, stating that if the United States ever suspended its laws of habeas corpus, we would be a martial state, and it would be no different than the Soviet Union. Do you realize attached to the crime bill before Congress now is the elimination of habeas corpus? That's how they're going to do it and make us a martial law state so that anyone who stands up and speaks against the government and what they're doing, they can arrest them and not even give a cause and let them rot away in jail and never be brought forward to see whether what they are arrested for is the truth or not. So notice now the law that they're going to get the governor, which is the king Darius, to sign. Verse 7. All the presidents of the kingdom, the governors and the princes, the counselors and the captains, have consulted together to establish a royal statute and to make a firm decree that whosoever shall ask a petition of any god or man for 30 days, except you, King Darius, he shall be cast into the den of lions. Now, you have to do your homework and know that in the kingdom of the Medo-Persian Empire, once a statute was put in effect, it was irrevocable. It was law. It was a mandate that you carried it out, no matter what it was. So here, if Darius the Mede decides to establish this law, and they always had a ring with his official signet, they would have wax that they would put on to seal the document, put his seal on it. Once it was signed and sealed, that was law in the kingdom. It could not be changed. So this means that if Daniel is caught worshiping his God, anyone for the next 30 days other than Darius the king, he'll be thrown into the lion's den. So the stage is set to get rid of the number one man in the kingdom under Darius. Verse 8. Now, O king, establish the decree. They probably used some type of reasoning like, we've just captured the Babylonian Empire. We must see who is loyal to you and who is not loyal. Does that smack at what the young man said in the movie several years ago concerning the New Age movement? It was on ABC television. And the young man stood up. Chris Christopherson was the father and the president of the United States. And this young man stood up and said, anyone who will not go into who will not pledge allegiance to the New Age will be crushed. So here it is, the same thing over and over again. If you are not signing or pledging allegiance to Darius, the Medo-Persian Empire, we must eliminate you. Verse 8. Now, O king, establish the decree and sign the writing that it be not changed according to the law of the Medes and Persians, which alters not. Wherefore King Darius signed the writing and the decree. So now they had in writing a way to trap Daniel and anyone else who would not go along with the new empire. Verse 10. Now when Daniel knew that the writing was signed, he went into his house. He immediately wanted to consult God concerning this. And his windows being open in his chamber toward Jerusalem, he kneeled upon his knees 3 times a day and prayed, and gave thanks before his God, just like he did before. But notice it was not to Darius. The decree said 30 days. You couldn't pray to any god, anyone but Darius. Verse 11. Then these men assembled and found Daniel praying and making supplication before his God. Then they came near and spake before the king concerning the king's decree. Have you not signed a decree that every man that shall ask a petition of any god or man within 30 days, except you, king, shall be cast into the den of lions? The king answered. Of course he did. He knew that the law could not be altered. That was the way the Medes and the Persians were. Verse 13. Then answered they and said before the king, Daniel of the captivities of Judah. He makes petition, and it says 3 times a day to another god. Verse 14. Then the king, when he heard those words, was sore displeased with himself. Why? He didn't see through the trap that was being set and the conspiracy to overthrow Daniel, because Daniel was a good man and they had to get rid of him because of jealousy, greed, and their own pride. Notice that Darius was a good man too. He did everything he could, according to verse 14, until the sun went down to change that law. But it could not be altered. That was the law of the Medes and the Persians. Then verse 15. Then these men assembled unto the king, and said unto the king, Know, O king, that the law of the Medes and the Persians is that no decree nor statute which the king established may be changed. Therefore Daniel had to go into the lion's den. So they took Daniel. They threw him into the lion's den. But of course, Darius did not sleep all night. He was a man with a conscience, apparently, a ruler who was just when dealing with other people. Notice what he said when he got up. Verse 19. Then the king arose very early in the morning, and went in haste unto the den of lions. And when he came to the den, he cried with a lamentable voice. He was very sad. And the king spake and said to Daniel, O Daniel, servant of the living God, is your God, whom you serve continually, able to deliver you from the lions? Then, of course, Daniel answered. And that was a tremendous relief on his mind, because he knew for a fact then that the God Daniel served truly had power. We're going to need to know that very soon. Brethren, I don't know why, but I keep getting the feeling we're getting close. When we see people talking, the New Age movement, about the year 2000, having everything set up, the world government, when we see the North American continent, which was global group number 1, already in place as one big trade zone, Canada, the United States, and Mexico. Now they're working on Central and South America. They're working on Europe. They're getting everything in place. They've already got Eastern Asia and so on. It's under communist rule. So they have everything set in place except a few nations on the continent of Africa and the Muslim world, the Arabs. Once that's done, it's over. The world government will be intact. The Bilderbergers have met lately, and in their secret meetings they said within the next 5 years they must have more wars like the Iraqi conflict under the auspices of the United Nations to suppress anyone who would ever rear their head to stop the New World Order. It's going to happen. And the United States military might is going to be used once again within the next 5 years. And once that's done, Revelation 13:4, no one will be able to make war with the beast because the United Nations will be powerful. And we're going to have a magazine very soon where I'm going to show government documents which state that we are turning over our military to the United Nations, and there will be a world military force and no other nation will have any armaments when there is a complete disarmament in the world and the new world government set up. Verse 21, then said Daniel unto the king, he acknowledged him. Then verse 22, my God has sent his angel and has shut the mouth's lion, or the lion's mouth. Sorry, I was thinking ahead of time there. Thinking about us. And our angel, do we realize we have an angel? There are angels in this house. You know, there's double the population that's sitting in this room. There's angels here, and some of them are your personal angels that report to God. They're going to be the determining factor because they're going to be watching our lives day in and day out to see who we are, what our heart is doing in relationship to other people and God. And when the pressure is applied at the end of the age, they will be the determining factor probably whether the guns will be able to penetrate your body, whether they'll be able to imprison us, whether we'll be in a place of safety out of the reach of the armies of this world government. Those angels will report to God and He will give them the go if we're to be protected. Or if our life has not been such, He may say, no, let more pressure be applied. So it's going to be up to us whether we're willing to live godly today or live like the world and have to go into the tribulation. The angels are there. They are the watchers, as we saw in previous chapters of Daniel. Notice now verse 22. I'll read it completely. My God has sent His angel and has shut the lions' mouths, that they have not hurt me, for as much as before Him innocency was found in me. Not perfection, not absolute sinless life, no. All have sinned and come short of the glory of God, but it says innocency of heart and mind in that we want to obey and we try our dead level best with the things that we understand. We do it the best we can to please God our Father. Verse 23. Then was the king exceeding glad for him, and commanded that they should take Daniel up out of the den. So Daniel was taken up out of the den, and no manner of hurt was found upon him, because he believed in his God. Do we believe in our God? That's the question today. Do we believe that He is able to deliver? You know, we read the Bible and we see the great exploits of God, of Jesus Christ, of the angels, and so on. We see how they intervened in history back there in the lives of those men. But do we believe that He has changed today? Or do we honestly believe that no matter what happens, if God wants you alive for a purpose, then He can deliver you out of no matter what circumstance it is? If He so chooses. If He wants you to be a witness in some way. After all, what about the two witnesses of Revelation 11? Do we honestly believe that the beast government that rises is going to let them plague the earth and their kingdom at will with any kind of plague they want and not try to stop them? Sure, they're going to try to stop them, but God will give them such power, probably hedge around them with millions of angels, and stop any effort to kill them until their job is finished. And then the angelic protection will be removed, and then the beast will take them. Verse 24, and the king commanded, and they brought those men which had accused Daniel, and they cast them into the den of lions, them, their children, and their wives. Now that is a harsh punishment. These men created a conspiracy, and yet the wives and the children had to suffer the consequences of these men. This is just the unbridled truth. That's the way it is. Even in communist countries today, behind the Iron Curtain, if one person in a family is involved in something, the whole family suffers. Rations are taken away, or maybe as it was when the Bolshevik Revolution first happened, purges. They would come and knock on your door at night, and the whole family's taken away in boxcars and never seen again. Now notice the next phrase in verse 24. And the lions had the mastery of them. In other words, they were hungry. They had a way back in those days where if they had an execution coming, they had someone to be thrown into the lion's den, they just wouldn't feed them a few days. That way they'd be good and hungry. And when these individuals went into the lion's den, they became the next meal. This is exactly what's taken place. God shut the mouths of the lions so they wouldn't hurt Daniel, but they were primed, and the angels took away the power of their mouth, and their jaws and their appetite rekindled. And when these men hit the bottom of the lion's den, they were ripped apart, said all their bones in pieces. And probably some of them were even ripped apart before they ever hit the bottom of the lion's den. As they were falling, the lions would jump up and grab them and just jerk them. That's a pretty horrible fate for little children and the wives who were not involved in the conspiracy of the husband. And yet that was the punishment in those days. The whole family suffered. Verse 25. Then King Darius wrote unto all people, nations, and languages that dwell in all the earth, peace be multiplied unto you. I make a decree. Notice now the Medo-Persian government, when they make a decree and a statute, it's permanent. That in every dominion of my kingdom men tremble and fear before who? The God of Daniel. Why did Daniel go through this? Don't you know that he was petrified? He had faith, but you and I have faith too, don't we? Some of us have given up jobs so that we could keep God's proper day of worship, keep His covenant. We've been ridiculed. We've been harangued, accused of works because we want to please our Father when we know that there's nothing we can do to earn salvation. But if you do the least thing that the Bible says, you're accused of works and trying to earn salvation. Don't you know that Daniel got this same ridicule? But now Daniel was used powerfully as an example. And now the God of Daniel, the true Creator God, was to be worshipped by everybody. For He is the living God, and steadfast forever in His kingdom, that which shall not be destroyed, and His dominion shall be even unto the end. He delivers and rescues, and He will do that, even at the time of the end. That's the time just ahead of us. He can deliver and He can rescue, and He will. And you know, He will rescue every single person. Maybe not alive. He will rescue them from the grave. See? Our God can deliver from the grave and rescue from the grave. Do you realize that for some, the grave is going to be a place of safety at the end of the age? For the elderly especially. They can just lay down and go to sleep. And they'll be in the grave until all this goes by. They won't even realize what's happening. Verse 28. Notice the very conclusion now of this chapter. So this Daniel prospered in the reign of Darius and in the reign of Cyrus the Persian. So here are the co-rulers in the Medo-Persian Empire, and Daniel prospered during their time. Now I want to go into chapter 7, because this is going to be a very dynamic chapter. We'll notice as we go through the book of Daniel that God will give a vision, and it will be like the vision of the image, where it only had 4 parts, and it told of 4 governments. Then you'll come along with another vision, and it'll add a little more to it. Then another vision that'll be about the same thing, but add yet more, so the details begin to fit. Chapter 7, verse 1. In the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, Daniel had a dream and visions of his head upon his bed. All right, now notice what the vision is. Verse 2. Daniel spake and said, I saw in my vision by night, and behold, the 4 winds of the heaven strove upon the great sea. When you look in Revelation chapter 17, verse 15, you'll see the sea is humanity. So here were wars. Winds blowing in different direction are wars taking place in the earth, in the sea of humanity, among nations. Verse 3, and 4 great beasts came up from the sea, diverse one from another. So there were 4 great governments that finally arrived from all the wars that were taking place among the nations. All of them were different. They lived at different times. Verse 4, the first was like a lion. And I'll fill in the blanks as we go along here. This was Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar, 625 to 538 BC, until finally Belshazzar died on the very night of the Medo-Persians when they diverted the river and came into the impregnable city of Babylon. I beheld, the first was like a lion and had eagle's wings. I beheld till the wings thereof were plucked, and it was lifted up from the earth and made stand upon the feet as a man, and a man's heart was given to it. Remember, Nebuchadnezzar was made like a beast, and he grazed in the field for 7 years, and then his sanity came back to him, and he went into the kingdom, and he possessed the kingdom, and it was the most glorious kingdom at that time that had ever existed. Verse 5, so that was the first government. And behold, another beast, a second like to a bear. This is the Medo-Persian Empire that actually took over. When it captured Babylon, the rise started in 558 BC, and then it captured Babylon in 538. And that is when they became supreme ruler and ruled to 330 BC. And it raised up itself on one side, and had 3 ribs in the mouth of it between the teeth of it. And they said thus unto it, arise, devour much flesh. And it did. It was a military type regime. After this I beheld, and lo, another like a leopard. A leopard strikes rapidly. They're fast, very quick. Alexander the Great, that was his technique. He came on the scene, took over from his father, Philip, and then in 333 to 31 BC, the Greco-Macedonian Empire ruled. Alexander actually conquered the known world after he took over the kingdom in approximately 4 years. The most rapid in history. Even modern nations have never done or taken over globally that rapidly. Now notice that this particular beast was different. In verse 6 it said it had on its back 4 wings of a fowl. The beast had also 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. After Alexander the Great died, at the age of 33, according to most historians, the kingdom was divided into 4 sections among the 4 generals of Alexander. The first one was Ptolemy, the second Cassander, the third Lycomachus, the fourth one Seleucus. So the Greco-Macedonian Empire was divided into 4 areas, and each one ruled independently from the other. Now verse 7. After this I saw in the night visions, and behold, a 4th beast, dreadful and terrible, and strong exceedingly, and it had great iron teeth. So this was a military regime that had never been equal to before, in that it would control everything and everyone in whatever nation they took. It devoured and brake in pieces, and stamped the residue with the feet of it. And it was different or diverse from all the other beasts that were before it. and it had 10 horns. So it was different. And we're going to discover the difference, hopefully today. I considered the horns, verse 8, and behold, there came up another little horn that was among those 10 horns, before whom there were 3 of the first horns plucked up by the roots. And behold, in this horn were the eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking great things. When you go back into history, you see that after the collapse of the Holy Roman Empire, which did occur in 476 AD, there have been various types of resurrections of that empire. Why do I say that? Because history of the world was given in the book of Daniel. God said there would be 4 world governments, and every significant government that would rise, that would dominate world politics. Look at verse 24. And the 10 horns out of this kingdom. So the 10 horns would come out of the 4th kingdom, or the Roman Empire. So who are these 3 horns? History tells us that 3 groups revived. The Vandals in 455 AD, then the Heruli from 476 to 493, and the Ostrogoths from 493 to 554. And for the first time in human history, a leader of a church commanded the military, you might say. And what happened was that the Bishop of Rome, who became known as the Pope, crowned Justinian for the revival of Rome. And it was called the Holy Roman Empire. And their armies went out and they destroyed the Vandals, the Heruli, and the Ostrogoths. Here were 3 revivals of Rome, and they were destroyed and plucked up, and the nations didn't exist anymore. So then, for the first time in history, this little horn, who became an office of the papacy, it was different than anything that had ever ruled in Rome before. Now all of a sudden we had not only a political government, but we had a political and religious government working hand in glove. And we'll see that after we finish with the book of Daniel and go on to the book of Revelation, where there'll be a beast and a false prophet. And that false prophet has existed, and the Bible will tell us this little horn, once it raised up, has always been there, but it would always ride governments to power. It had no power of its own outside the power backed up by the military of a government. Verse 9. I beheld till the thrones were cast down, and the Ancient of Days did sit, whose garment was white as snow, and the hair of his head like pure wool. When you read Revelation chapter 1, verse 13 to 16, you'll see that this describes Jesus Christ, and Jesus is composed of the same thing, Spirit, as his Father. So, like Father, like Son, this is what Jesus looks like, as well as the Father. This is the Ancient of Days sitting. His throne was like the fiery flame, and his wheels as burning fire. When you read Ezekiel chapter 1, Ezekiel chapter 10, you'll actually see a description of the portable throne which God travels the universe in. Yes, there are UFOs, but we know what they are. Possibly. We don't know the ones that men see, but we do know the description of what God says. He does travel in some type of machine. Verse 10. A fiery stream issued and came forth from before him. Thousands ministered unto him, and 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him. The judgment was set, and the books were open. Now, one of 2 possibilities are taking place here. Number 1, this is the angelic host in heaven, standing before him. Or a possibility is the resurrection of the first fruits have taken place, and now they're getting ready to open the books to judge the rest of the world that is yet to be resurrected. I feel that this is the angelic host That's my personal belief. Verse 11. I beheld then because of the voice of the great words which the horn spake. And the horn was different from the other political governments. I beheld even till the beast was slain. You see that in Revelation 19, verse 11 to the remainder of the chapter. And his body destroyed and given to the burning flame. That's described in detail. This is the very end of the age. So this horn and beast were going to rule right on through with revivals that would come up. It said 10. It did not say that it would be throughout every moment and every second of history. A government will rise and collapse. Then another one will come up and collapse. And there will be intervals between the times of the power of those governments. This is exactly what God's saying. But you can tell His program, starting with Nebuchadnezzar, all the way down to the very end of the age, by the book of Daniel. Verse 13. I saw in the night visions, and behold, one like the Son of Man came with the clouds of heaven, and came to the Ancient of Days. And they brought him near before him. Here is Jesus Christ going before God the Father. He is about to be crowned and coronated. Why would he need to be crowned and coronated? He was God. He came into human form. He died. He was resurrected from the dead. He became our high priest. See? He has not been wearing a crown. He will not be King of Kings and Lord of Lords until He returns. Today He is acting as our high priest, sprinkling His personal blood on the mercy seat for our sins. He has no crown today. He's our high priest. So He comes at the very close of the age when the beast and the false prophet are ruling. God the Father places the crown on His head. Verse 14. And there was given Him dominion. That means rulership, glory, and a kingdom, that all people, nations, languages should serve Him. His dominion or rulership is an everlasting dominion, which shall not pass away, and His kingdom that which shall not be destroyed. And when you read in the book of Revelation, even chapter 20, Christ reigns for 1,000 years. After the 1,000 years, Satan is loosed a little season to go out and deceive, but Jesus' government goes on. And when those who are deceived come up against Jerusalem, the holy city, then fire comes down from heaven and burns them all up. But Jesus keeps ruling. His rulership will never be destroyed. Now notice what has taken place. In Daniel 2, it told about 4 governments. And then it said that would be divided, the legs and the feet. It did not go into any detail as to what any of this was, except it gave us the starting point of Nebuchadnezzar, the Babylonian government. Then, as we went on over into other chapters, it showed that Darius the Mede and Cyrus, the Medo-Persian Empire, would supersede and take the kingdom. So it filled in another blank in history. And now we come into chapter 7 and we see the same 4 beasts that he talked about on the great image. The Babylonian, the Medo-Persian, the Greco-Macedonian Empire, and then it would be divided up into 4 groupings, 4 different government units, but it would still be out of the same Greco-Macedonian Empire. Then the Roman government. And there would be 10 horns. Notice these 10 horns were not the 10 toes. We must understand that. 10 horns come out of the head of this thing, the government. The 10 toes are at the very end of the image, which means it will be in existence at the very end of the age. The 10 horns were to be successive kingdoms, and after 3 of them rose, the Pope would rise and destroy them, using the military apparatus of the revived Roman government, and establish what was called the Holy Roman Empire. After that, there must be 7 more revivals, and when the 7th revival comes, Jesus Christ will establish the kingdom. Verse 15, I, Daniel, was grieved in my spirit in the midst of my body, and the visions of my head troubled me. He didn't understand it, but he wanted to know. Verse 16, I came near unto one of them that stood by, and asked him the truth of all this. So he told me, and made me know the interpretation of things. These great beasts, which are four kings which shall arise out of the earth. That tells us the interpretation of God. Those first four beasts will be great beasts. Any government is a beast, but these are great beasts, showing that they will rule the world, the known world anyway. And notice that it will be these four beasts and no more. There will be revivals out of the fourth one. And verse 18 says, but the saints of the Most High shall take the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever, even forever and ever. So once again, there is a short synopsis, a review. Four great governments. And after the fourth great government, then God's kingdom will be set up. Well, verse 19, this still did not satisfy Daniel. He still didn't understand. He wanted more. Verse 19, then I would know the truth of the fourth beast. After all, the first three came and went, but here comes the fourth one. And it's out of the fourth one that the 10 horns came. And so he wanted to know the truth. What is going on? Which was diverse from all the others. Notice the fourth beast is different. Exceeding dreadful, whose teeth were of iron, his nails of brass, which devoured, brake in pieces, and stamped the residue with his feet. And of the 10 horns that were in his head, he wanted to know about those. And of the other which came up. So there were 10 horns plus another one, which made 11 total. Now, when this little horn came up, it plucked up 3. And before whom 3 fell. Even of that horn that had eyes, and a mouth that spake very great things, whose look was more stout than his fellows. I beheld, and the same horn made war with the saints, and prevailed against them. I want to stop there just for a moment. You go back into history. Out of the fourth beast is where you must look for this little horn to come up. And it had to be someone who persecuted the true commandment keepers of God, those who understood the covenant. So, could this have been someone rising up in China? No. Could it have been someone rising up in South Africa? How about South America? No way. Australia? No. It couldn't have even been in America at that time. Because this came out of the fourth beast, and history absolutely verifies that there were 3 revivals that came on the scene. The Vandals, the Heruli, and the Ostrogoths out of Rome. And then it was defeated by the armies after the Pope had crowned Justinian and given the imperial rise to the Roman Empire. History verifies. When you read Fox's Book of Martyrs, which some in this room cannot read because it'll make them get sick at their stomach, it verifies that over 50 million people were killed in what is called the Low Countries, Benelux country of the Netherlands, Holland, and Belgium alone, not counting the rest of the Holy Roman Empire, by the Roman government at the command of the religious sector, because they were declared heretics for reading the Bible and believing what the Bible said instead of the ironclad rules of the church that came out of Rome and their ironclad dictates as to what you were to believe. And if you dared to step outside of their boundaries, you were declared heretics. And when you read the history of Europe from the time of the imperial restoration of the Holy Roman Empire in 554 AD, all the way to the collapse with the Battle of Waterloo in 1814, you'll find that there was persecution. People had to flee outside the confines of the Roman Empire, away from the armies, so that they could practice their religion. The Albigensians and so on. They would climb up into the highest mountains in the Alps and they would be hunted down and killed. Peter Waldo was another one. They called him the Waldensians, who picked up a Bible, began to read it, and understood God's ways. He was hounded, he was persecuted, became a pauper, and finally killed. All because he would dare to go against this great persecuting force that had a great mouth that spoke great things. And notice it was against the great God. And we'll see that in just a minute. And this horn, for 1,260 consecutive years, persecuted Christians in Europe. Notice that this shows that this particular horn would live until Jesus Christ returned. But remember, governments rise, they fall. Then they can revive, just like Germany did after World War I. It was there. It was in rubbles. Then World War II, people said Germany will never rise again. It's in rubbles. It'll never be rebuilt. And yet today, it's the greatest economic power outside the United States in the world. It's the hub of Europe. And now they're putting together the economy of Europe, where there'll be 370 million people there, and it will have the greatest economy on earth. It will even pale the United States. So, it is rising. So here it is again. The beast, these horns would rise and then fall. Rise and fall. And there would be 10 consecutive. 3 of them, then a political and religious aspect would defeat them. Then after that there would be 7 revivals that had a religious connotation with it. Verse 22. Until the Ancient of Days came and judgment was given to the saints of the Most High, and the time came that the saints possessed the kingdom. Now, he's given us a little more description. He said that 3 kings would fall, and then a little horn would come up, and it would have power along with the governments for the last 7. So Daniel is now getting a little more information. It's satisfying him more. But we have a problem. The problem is, when I gave part 1 of this message, it says, Daniel, go your way. The book is sealed, closed till the end. Then people will understand. That's us. Daniel began to grasp a few things of what he was saying, but could you and I envision the world today if we'd lived 400 years ago? No, neither could Daniel. And so it still troubled him, even though he was given further information. But the further information was for us, no one else. Verse 23. Thus he said, the 4th beast shall be the 4th kingdom upon the earth. That was Rome. And as I mentioned in part 1, there is someone who's saying Saddam Hussein is the 4th beast. And it was not the Roman Empire, and yet the Roman Empire is the most documented empire that has ever existed in the world. Which shall be diverse or different from all kingdoms, and shall devour the whole earth, and shall tread it down and break it in pieces. Now notice verse 24. This is very important, because it absolutely proves that the 10 horns will come out of this 4th beast, Rome. And the 10 horns out of this kingdom are 10 kings that shall arise. And another shall arise after them, and he shall be diverse or different from the first, and he shall subdue 3 kings. So once again, in summary, 3 kings were defeated that rose up, the Heruli, Vandals, and the Ostrogoths. They were strictly political governments. And now this one will be different from the first, the Roman government, which was political. Now you have a religion, church, and state combination. You actually have a combination of 2 rulers. Number 1, the political. Number 2, the religious. And they actually set up the religious part of it as an exact duplicate of the political. Rome would have a senate that would sit and meet. What does the Catholic Church have? They have a senate or cardinals that come together. Then they would divide up all the land area into dioceses. What does the Catholic Church do? The identical thing. St. Louis is the head of one archdiocese. So that just like the Roman Empire divided up its government, so the church divided it up so they could control it completely. Verse 25. And he shall speak great words against the Most High. This is this little horn that comes up. And shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and think to change times and laws. They shall be given into his hand until the times, and the dividing of times. Okay, let's stop for a minute and go back into history. This says that this little horn, once it rises, will have absolute control. And he will change God's laws. He changed the Sabbath to Sunday. You can read all the literature, even in the catechisms that are taught in the schools of the Catholic Church. He changed all of God's holy days, found in Leviticus 23, to Mystery Babylon holy days that most of the Christian world today keep. Christmas, Easter, April's Fool's Day, Halloween, all the rest of them, they are out directly from ancient Babylonian mystery religion. And that's why King Nebuchadnezzar, when he was cut down, they put the iron around the tree, kept it alive until the end of the age, and then all these things would be discovered for what they are by you and me. The rest of the world will go their way thinking it's fine, but we'll know the truth of the matter. During this time, and the dividing of time, which is 3.5 years, and in Bible prophecy, a day, according to Numbers 14:34, is as a year in prophecy. They can be. Not every time, but it can be. In order to understand whether this is 3.5 literal years or whether it is a day for a year, we must go to history to find out. 3.5 years, the number of days is 1260. If it's a day for a year, then in history it must tell us that when this little horn rose in 554 AD, with the imperial restoration of the Holy Roman Empire when the Pope crowned Justinian, then there must be 1260 years, and not one less or not one more. If that's the case, where the Pope and the Holy Roman Empire rule supreme, then that's what this time period stands for. In my college history courses, one of the headings, 1814, collapse of the Holy Roman Empire with the defeat of Napoleon at Waterloo. You add 554 or subtract it from 1814 and it comes out exactly 1260 years. So the Catholic Church, led the persecution of Christians in Europe for 1260 years until the Pope was taken and put in prison in France by Napoleon's general Berthier, and he died in prison. No more persecution after that time, after 1814. And then the church, even America, was settled, and the church flourished. People who were obeying the true commandments of God here in this country and continuing in Europe also. But that's going to change, because this power will rise again at the end of the age. Now, the fourth horn came. It was the imperial restoration of the Roman Empire by Justinian when he was crowned by the Pope in 554. 3 kings were destroyed. So this was the fourth one that rose. The fifth horn that rose was the Frankish kingdom. It began in 774 AD by Charlemagne, and he was crowned by the Pope in 800 AD and made it officially the Holy Roman Empire once again. That was the fifth horn. The sixth horn was Otto the Great. He was crowned by the Pope in 962 AD. The seventh horn came up, the Habsburg dynasty. Charles the Great was crowned by the Pope in 1520 AD. The eighth horn came finally when Garibaldi began to put together all the little city-states in Italy and put Italy together, and then Napoleon had an alliance with Mussolini. I'm sorry, Napoleon was the eighth horn. I'm one ahead of myself. Napoleon was the eighth horn. The defeat of Napoleon in 1814 was the collapse of the Holy Roman Empire, the 1260 years of persecution by this individual who claimed to be great and changed times and laws. Then The ninth horn arose, if we understand this correctly. When Italy was united under Garibaldi, they had a treaty, and it was signed with the Pope, a concordant it's called, making the Catholic Church the official church of Italy. This was also signed by Hitler of Germany, and that's why they were the Axis powers. And we've actually published pictures of it in some of our magazine called Catholic Imperialism, the signing of these concordants making the Catholic Church the official religion in Germany rather than the Lutheran Church, which is more powerful in Germany than even the Catholics. And yet they signed the documents. Now the 10th horn is yet to rise. It's rising before our eyes right now. I personally believe the 10th horn will be the final revival of the Holy Roman Empire. It will be a global government because the terminology used in Revelation 13 is the same used here in Daniel 7 in describing how Jesus will rule. He will be world ruler, and it says over every tribe, nation, language, and tongue. It says the identical terminology in the book of Revelation chapter 13 for this final beast that's going to rise. It'll be the last horn that's coming up. It'll be a central government, but it will come out of Europe. And what were the planners, the Illuminati and so on, the Bilderbergers, the Council on Foreign Relations in England, the Royal Institute for International Affairs? What did they say? When we set the crown on our man in Europe, we'll have world government. So where's the United Nations found? New York City, which is an extension, America, of European ancestry. And then where else is the United Nations sitting? The Hague? Don't they have offices also in Brussels? Other cities in Europe? Yes, coming out of Europe. Just like the Bible said, out of the fourth beast, 10 horns would rise. And when the 10th one rises, it will be destroyed by Jesus Christ at His coming. Verse 26. We haven't got to the very last now. We'll get to that in the book of Revelation. The very last horn, and it's rising. Verse 26. But the judgment shall sit. They shall take away his dominion, to consume and to destroy it unto the end. Notice, it will happen to the end. The 1260 years was just a break in the persecution. Probably until the gospel, the real gospel that the God of heaven would set up a kingdom, was taken around the world. Verse 27. And the kingdom and the dominion and greatness of the kingdom under the whole heaven shall be given to the people of the saints of the Most High, whose kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and all dominions, all rulers, all governments shall serve and obey Him, Jesus Christ. Hitherto is the end of the matter. As for me, Daniel, he's saying my thought processes were still confused. It still troubled me. My countenance was changed. I didn't understand the whole matter, but I kept the matter in my heart. In part 3 of this series, we'll go into chapter 8 and 9 of Daniel. And we're going to show that God is revealing to Daniel step by step just a little more of the whole purpose and plan until the setting up of the true kingdom of God.